What was the biggest challenge for you in learning how to live with this?
The biggest challenge I think I had was twofold. I think there's two aspects to it. And one of the aspects is you can't let other people, whether it's adult, children, whoever it might be, physicians, always tell you what is the right direction to move in based off their preconceived notions or biases that they have. I think that was such a big thing I had to learn at an early age, and very luckily, I had parents, siblings, extended family who were so supportive and really did not give the space for me to be treated any other way than any other child in the family. I was held accountable. I was held, even when things weren't necessarily my fault or I can control them. I was given the same expectations. I was given the same opportunities, but there was a lot of outside fears from adults of what I could do. So they would immediately take their fears or their biases and not give me opportunities and say, this is what you could do. This is the lane you need to be in. And I had to learn very quickly how to advocate for myself and how to do things differently. And I think, there is no one size fits all for anybody in this world. Everybody has different experiences. Everyone looks at things differently due to those experiences they have. But understanding the power we have within ourselves to understand our own capabilities and to understand the power of our own voice. And I think that was the second part of that challenge, is really identifying how to get your point across, which to this day I'm not perfect at. And if you talk to people, sometimes my red hair does shine through. Uh, you don't want to get me. Sometimes I do become sassy, and it doesn't always come out right. But I know how to advocate because I had to learn to advocate for myself and make sure that my voice was being heard in the rooms.
You sound so very familiar. And there are many people know a thing or two about a thing or two, but nobody knows what you are living with and what you deal with on a day in a day out basis better than you do. So you
Hmm.
can't let anybody else dictate what you're supposed to do with your, how you're supposed to act and behave, or you know, uh, treat yourself. And you do need to advocate for yourself.
and and that was one thing, and I'll let you ask your next question after this, but I did want to touch upon that, expand on it a little bit. It's something we kind of hit on before we started talking today. Is I recently had a conversation with an individual who was kind of, they weren't understanding things, and in a joking kind of way, they were like, well, you're perfect. Like, how would you understand the shoes I'm in? And I was like, because on the outside, I don't have any scars, does not mean on the inside I haven't gone through things or might be going through things. And that response kind of took them off kilter because they were looking for me to validate their excuses due to the circumstances they were in. And instead of validating it, I challenged it. And they were like, well, you cannot relate on any level. Your life is perfect. You've never really had to go through XYZ. And I stopped them and I was like, well, why do you think that? What makes you perceive that? And they were like, well, you grew up in a good family, you lived in in a town that was better off, you went to college, you didn't have to worry about expand, and they went on, right? now have a successful business. Okay. But what you didn't realize is for many years I had to fight for my life. Whether it was in certain rooms or it was just fighting to have the same experiences you had. I remember when I was 16 years old, because in the state of New Jersey, you have to get your permit, you are 16. And I had to get tests, neurological tests done before I could even go and sit for to get my permit, just to prove that I was not having seizures. And I was sitting there as all my friends, just went and did it. And then all of a sudden we're able to drive, and they took it as such a privilege, where I took it as such a opportunity, because I knew that there was, potentially in one of these tests, there could have been a one off experience where something got triggered, and then I wouldn't be able to go and do the same thing everyone else was doing my age. So every time I do get to do something, I look at it that way. And I went on to say to him, school for me, I did well. I did very well. But that's because instead of going out on weekends and be able to take a break from learning, I had to spend every moment learning. I knew that my power was going to be in that knowledge, but it took me a lot longer to actually understand it. And I had to get, ask teachers to stay behind and teach it to me differently. I had to advocate for those things. And I said, there's situations now that aren't easy. But if we sit in the space of trying to identify, oh, they won't understand where I'm coming from just because it doesn't look similarly, or they look similar, or they necessarily start the conversation that way, doesn't mean there's not underlying patterns and experiences that can actually bring us all together.